Hey, this is Kev with Blender Binge, back with another tutorial. This time we're going to be creating this Facehugger tail alien effect thingy inside of Blender 2.8, and we're going to use Eevee, and I think you're going to dig it. So let's get started. So the first thing is I'm sitting here inside the Blender interface, and I have a camera with no lights and no default cube, and my camera is pointing straight down the y-axis at the center of the grid. So if I hit N on the keyboard and I go to item for the camera, you can see that everything is zeroed out except for rotation here at 90. So what I'll do now is just do a little bit of a basic setup in Eevee to get this thing started. So I'm going to go over here to this little tab for render. I'll turn on bloom. Maybe I'll turn on ambient occlusion while I'm here. I'll turn on screen space reflection. I'll extend this, turn off half res trace, turn on refraction. I might want it. And shadows, if you have a relatively powerful graphics card, you can turn on high bit depth and soft shadows. I'll do it because it looks kind of cool in this tutorial. If you don't have a powerful machine and this chokes, don't worry about it. I'll just turn that off for now. And let's get started. So I'm going to first start making the tail. So to do that, I'm just going to go to add, or I can hit Shift A, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to say UV sphere. And this comes in and it's pretty heavy. It's too heavy for me. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to add UV sphere down here, hit this little arrow. I'm going to say segments to about 16 and rings about 12. Enter, and that's probably pretty good for what I want. And what I can also do is I can spin this on the y-axis about 90. All right, so that's probably pretty good. I like that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to hit Object, Apply, and I'll say All Transforms. Or you can just hit Control A on the keyboard and just hit All Transforms, and that zeroes everything out. So what I'll do now is I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'm going to say Enter. And what I'll do is I'll just do this numerically. So you can move this yourself, doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it numerically here. So I'm going to say on the x-axis, which is this, I'm going to say 1. And then for scale, I'm going to hold down my mouse, drag this down so it covers all of these. I'm going to hit 0.5. If it doesn't work for you, just hit 0.5 for each one of these. Now, I'm going to duplicate this guy one more and put him on the other side. So to do that, I'm going to select him. I'm going to hit Shift D, Enter. And then I'm just going to put a little negative in front of this 1 over here. And that puts him right there. So that's the shape I want. So what I'll do now is I'll select this guy, hold down Shift, select him, hold down Shift, keep holding down Shift, select him, and now hit Control J on the keyboard for join, which also lives here under Object, Join, Control J, same thing. And it just takes all these objects and creates one object out of it. So sphere 002. So I can change that to tail just to keep things named right. And that's pretty good. And while I'm here, I'm going to hit, with this selected, I'll hit Control A again and say All Transforms. So that way it just zeroes everything out again, which is very important for the next step that we do. So let me get rid of this so you can see these things. Now what I'll do is I can smooth this guy out a little bit, just looks wise. So I'll go to Object, and I'll say Shade Smooth, and now I'm ready. So what I'll do is go to Modifiers, Add Modifier, Array, and it gives these two guys holding hands. That's cool if that's the effect you're going for. It's not in my case, so I don't want it. I'm going to turn off Relative Offset, and done. Bye-bye. So what I'll do is I'm going to hit Count, and I'll say like 250. That's fine for this. And we still see nothing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create something to control this. And there's another tutorial that I did recently, and I'll link to that at the end of this video in a card, and you'll see it. It's another effect that uses this, and it's very similar, but you get something completely different. So what I'll do is I'll hit Add, Empty, Plane Axes. That's fine for this, and it just throws an empty into the scene. And if you can't see it, there it is. Okay. And what I'll do is I will now go back to tail, go back to my modifier here. I'm going to say Object Offset, and I'm going to choose the empty. And we still see nothing. But check this out. If I select the empty and I go to the move tool, all right, or I just move it down the y-axis, click and drag inside here, there we go. So it's pulling out an array. That's what I want. So I'm just going to go here and type in 0.5, and I like that. So now this is the part where the magic happens. If I rotate this around the y-axis, okay, the empty, I rotate it around the y-axis, it spins it. I like that. Now what I can do is I can also, so say I spin it to like 9, okay, 9 degrees, and on the Z, I pull it up a little bit. Now I'm getting that cool tail effect. And as long as I don't go too far where these things start separating, and I have to add more to it, that's probably pretty good. I like that effect. So with that, you see our camera still here in the middle. We can just move our camera out a little bit. And if I hit 0 on the keyboard, I go into the camera view. So what I want to do is I want to lock the camera view so I can hold it. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to view, and I'll say lock camera to view. And now if I middle mouse drag or middle mouse scroll wheel or hold down shift and middle mouse click, I can center my camera where I want it. So I'm just going to go about here. That looks pretty good. I dig it. I'm freaking out because I think this thing's going to attack me, and this is all cool, even though it's just a stupid little thing inside a computer, but it still looks really, really wicked. So with this empty, if you go to item here, you can now, with the location of the Y, okay, you can get this cool tail whipping effect. So now what we can do is we can start getting our shader going. All right, so even if I coil it more, you can see that's pretty cool. So let's get our shader. So what I'll do is I can use the shading tab up here, but I'm going to animate it later. So I don't want to use this. It does away with this tab and stuff. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit, and then I'm going to go here to where my mouse turns into a little crosshair thing. I'm going to click and drag up, makes a new window, and I'm going to use this little thing, hit that, and change it to shader editor. Now I'm going to select my tail. I'm going to say new shader, and there I get a principled BSDF shader. And I can turn on rendered view now, and you see we have no lights in the scene, but we have a principled shader on this guy. So the next thing we want to do, because we can't see anything, is let's add a light. So I'll go add light. For this, I'll just say point light, and here he is off to the side. Okay, if you don't see him, just hit that, turn on the little move tool. You can hit G on the keyboard and kind of bring him into the middle. And then I can go to this little light bulb thing here. Okay, go to the point, light bulb, and turn it up, maybe 1500. Cool. All right, I like that. That's looking pretty freaky. So what I'll do now is I'm going to give it a shader. So I'll go to my tail, and I'm going to start playing around with the base color. So for the base color, like I can turn it all the way down to black, or I could give it like that shader, you know, the Facehugger kind of beige color if I want, kind of weird. But I want the subsurface effect to really take hold. So if I turn up subsurface, and let me take my point light and push him a little bit further down, you see I'm getting this lifelike subsurface scattering effect in here. That's what I'm looking for. So with that, you can, if you took this like all the way down or put it all the way up, it doesn't really matter because it's kind of being more controlled with subsurface now. But if you were to bring the subsurface down a little bit, now you have a little bit more control in here over your shader. So I can give it some life. Maybe I can push it into like, I don't know. I can just make it look alienish. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now. That's fine. And roughness here, you can see that you can make it really wet looking or turn up the roughness and make it really rough. I'll put it somewhere in here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to give it a bump. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to go to Vector, Bump, take the normal, plug that into normal over here, and then I'll give it a texture to make it bumpy. So to do that, I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to go to texture, and I'll use noise for this. And I'll go factor to height. And then if you play with the scale here, you start getting this really cool, like broken up effect. And it looks pretty chill, pretty alien. And then what you can do is you can up the detail a little bit. And then I'll just leave the distortion. Distortion kind of twirls it around. I'll leave that at 0 for now. But we start getting this really kind of alien looking effect here. And I really kind of dig that. And then if you play here, you can see empty, and I pull this in and pull this out. All right, it just kind of sticks to it, and I'm happy with that. And if I rotate now even more, you could see, ooh, yeah, we're getting a cool effect here. But the thing I don't like here is that the texture starts swimming inside here. So the last thing we can do is we can add in a input texture coordinate, and I can say UV on the vector. And what this does is it gives the UV to one of these objects, but it's an array, so they all look very uniform. So the cool thing about that is that here you don't get, so if I go to my empty here, like you don't get the texture swimming in here, and that's nice, but it does look pretty uniform. So it depends on the kind of effect you want, but you can play with the scale and just give it something like that if you want. And then we can also go in here, and after the array tab, right, we can add in another displacement, and that'll break this up a little bit more. So I can go to add modifier, and I can go to displace. I can hit new. I can go to this little tab here, and I can say image or movie. I'll change this to clouds, and that's kind of it's kind of nasty. So I can play over here, or I can go down to modifiers, back to my modifiers tab, and under strength, I can pull that down a bit, and that's looking a little bit more broken up. So now, if I have empty here, you can see that the texture is not swimming, and I'm getting a really interesting looking, creepy effect. And one last thing we want to do here is make sure that texture coordinate is set to UV instead of local. And then we can play around with the strength a little bit and break it up. Or if it has a skin over it, you can change that back, UV map. That looks too uniform, so you can always go ahead and change it back to, you could say local, object, and just kind of make the effect your own. And what we do now is we can animate it and see what it looks like. So to do that, this is why I'm doing all this inside this one window here, is we can go to empty, and I can give a keyframe. So 250 frames is kind of a lot. I'm going to go to like 144, which at 24 seconds, so 24 frames a second, 144 is about 6 seconds. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say location. I'm going to say insert keyframe. I'm going to go to rotation, right click, insert keyframe. I'll go here to the end. Why not? Insert keyframe there, right click, insert keyframe, and now I can like play around in here. So say it like 20. I want to like move them in, rotate them a little bit. Okay, right click, insert keyframe, right click, insert keyframe. Or you could turn on this little button here. It says automatically keyframe, but be careful with this because that'll start setting keyframes everywhere. But as long as you know what you're doing, you can go ahead and play around with that. And let's just make this thing kind of really wiggle a little bit here. All right, wiggle a little bit more and coil back in. All right, so here we go. Hit play. We have something going like this. Kind of have it moving around. Pull it in here and have it snap back out. Something like that. And we'll render it and see what it looks like. And before we do that though, I could hit point and maybe push him down a little bit more. Make it a little more freaky looking, more high key. And let's see here. Maybe 1,000, 800. That's pretty cool. That's looking pretty freaky right there. And lastly, I can take the world and let me pull it down And that's looking really, really freaky. Wow. All right, so I'm gonna render this out. So to do that, I simply go to output, go to temp. I created a folder for alien coil, this alien tail, hit accept. File format, change it to FFmpeg. Encoding, if you have this H.264 and MP4, that's good enough for this purpose, and I'll render it, pause it, and come back and take a look at it. So go render, render animation, and I'll pause the video and then come back when it's done. All right, so we're back, and here's the animation, and yeah, it's a bit wild, a bit kind of crazy. We could probably just like have an animation that just twists, and maybe I'll do that now. Let me pause the video and go ahead. Okay, so we're back, and yeah, I cleaned it up a little bit. It looks a little bit better. So anyway, you can play with it. You can make the textures swim. You can make the textures not swim. You can basically do whatever you want with this. But it's a quick and dirty way of getting something kind of organic and just kind of freaky. Oh yeah, this is the link to the video that I promised in the beginning. So this is the skull animation one that I did. So you can check that out. Very similar technique. Go ahead and play with it, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So with that, hit the little bell notification, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.